The hotel room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and rain, the city lights bleeding through the thin curtains as if the world outside wanted to watch us. He was close enough that I could feel the warmth of him through the fabric of his shirt, our bodies a careful tangle on the edge of the bed. Every breath between us felt important, like a sentence we were both afraid to finish. His hand found mine without thinking, fingers interlocking, and the simple contact sent a small electric shock up my arm. We moved together slowly, like we were learning a language that had always been inside us but never spoken. When his lips touched mine, it was soft at first, testing, searching, then deeper, as if every withheld moment had been collected and was finally being returned. The city hummed below us. The distant siren, the murmur of late traffic, became a private soundtrack to something that felt like permission. He whispered my name in a way that made the word shape itself differently in my mouth. My heartbeat answered back, quick and certain, and for a second I forgot there had been plans, reservations, reasons to stop. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, respect tangled with desire, and it made everything sharper. There was laughter too, breathless and surprised, because this felt both reckless and inevitable. The duvet twisted around us as we shifted, our whispers painting secrets across the room. He kept asking without saying the words, "Are you sure? Do you want this?" And every time, my silence turned into consent. It wasn't just a physical closeness. It was the feeling of being known, of years of small moments collapsing into one honest, startling instant. My fingers traced the line of his jaw like I was memorizing it. He kissed the place behind my ear, and I wanted to map him back the same way, slowly, carefully, with reverence. Even as the distance between us disappeared, a part of me cataloged the tiny, impossible details. The hotel key card on the bedside table, the faint perfume he still wore, the way the lamp cast a gold halo around his head. But to understand how I got here, let me take you back. The story didn't begin in that hotel room. It began weeks before, when life still felt ordinary. I'd been living in my routine, mornings fueled by coffee too bitter to enjoy, afternoons buried in deadlines, and evenings where exhaustion was my only companion. Work had its rhythm, emails, meetings, polite conversations with coworkers that ended as quickly as they began. He wasn't a stranger to me. He'd always been there, someone I thought I knew well enough, but not deeply. We weren't close, not in the way people are when they share secrets or trade dreams over late-night calls. He was just there. A familiar face across the conference table, a voice I could recognize without looking up. And yet, I had always noticed him in small ways. The way his laugh seemed unrestrained, echoing a little too loud but never annoying. The way his sleeves were always rolled up like he was ready to dive into anything. The way his eyes, sharp and clear, seemed to look at people as if he actually listened. But I buried those thoughts. I told myself they didn't mean anything. He was safe in the category of someone else's world. I had my own to manage. That week, though, things shifted. We'd been assigned to the same project, one that demanded late nights, constant revisions, and endless cups of burnt office coffee. The kind of work that makes you forget what day it is but forces you into someone else's orbit. And in that orbit, I began to see him differently. It started small. The way he'd slide me the last piece of chocolate from a vending machine, insisting he wasn't hungry. The way he'd save me from technical glitches before I had to ask for help. The way he'd glance at me during meetings when the conversation grew tense, silently grounding me. I brushed it off at first, labeling it kindness. Professional courtesy. Nothing more. But the truth? My heart betrayed me. Every time he leaned closer to show me something on my screen, I became hyper-aware of the space between us. Every shared laugh, every inside joke whispered during long hours, it built something I didn't want to name. Something dangerous. There was one night, it must have been close to midnight, when we were the only two left in the office. Papers scattered everywhere, a soft playlist humming from someone's abandoned desk. I remember him leaning back in his chair, sighing and saying, "Sometimes I wonder if we're the only ones keeping this place running." I laughed, But my stomach twisted, because in that moment, it didn't feel like work. It felt like us against the world. And that scared me, because the unspoken rules were clear. Work was work. He was off limits. And yet, the thought of him kept slipping into the quiet moments of my day, on the commute home, while brushing my teeth, even in the middle of conversations with friends. Still, I convinced myself it was harmless. Just a crush. Just nerves from exhaustion and too much caffeine. But then came the business trip. A conference, a long drive, hotel reservations booked by the company. It wasn't just me and him. We went as a group. But somehow fate had its own plans. A last-minute mix-up, an overbooked hotel, and suddenly I was staring at a receptionist apologizing for the error. "There's only one room left," she'd said, sliding the key card across the counter. And I froze, because I knew what it meant. Not in the obvious way, but in the way possibilities shift when the world shrinks into four walls, one bed, and too many unspoken feelings. I tried to act calm, joking about how awkward it was, but inside, my chest tightened with something I didn't want to admit, a thrill. Because I already knew the story wasn't going to stay the same after that night. The hotel lobby was buzzing with people when we checked in, suitcases rolling, voices echoing, the smell of fresh coffee lingering in the air. Yet, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. One key card. One room. Him. Me. I laughed it off, trying to mask the way my palms felt clammy. "Well, this will be interesting," I said lightly, shoving the card into my pocket like it wasn't burning a hole there. He just smiled, that easy, unbothered smile of his. "We'll survive. It's just a room. Just a room." Easy for him to say. But to me, it felt like the universe was playing some dangerous game, one I wasn't sure I was ready for. When we opened the door, the room was warm, softly lit, surprisingly cozy. Neutral walls, neatly tucked sheets, a small desk tucked into the corner. And then, of course, the glaring truth. Only one bed. He raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching as if he wanted to tease me but thought better of it. "I can take the floor, don't worry." My laugh was awkward, too quick. "No, don't be ridiculous. It's just a bed. Just a bed." But nothing about it felt simple. We unpacked in silence, both pretending like this was normal. I sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through my phone, not really seeing the screen, while he fussed with his bag. The air between us felt heavier than it should, as though the room itself was aware of the tension I was trying so hard to ignore. Later that evening, we attended the conference dinner. Long tables, clinking glasses, polite chatter that filled the room. I tried to focus on networking, on conversations about markets and strategies, but every time he leaned closer to whisper something in my ear, usually a sarcastic remark about another guest, I felt my skin prickle with awareness. His voice was too close, too warm. And I realized then, it wasn't just the room. It was him. When we finally returned to the hotel, I kicked off my heels with a sigh of relief, while he loosened his tie, looking equally worn out. The atmosphere had shifted. The professional mask had slipped away. We weren't coworkers anymore. We were just two people, trapped in the same space, stripped down to something more raw, more real. He sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. "You know," he said, his tone casual but his eyes flicking up to meet mine, "this isn't as bad as I thought it would be." I tilted my head. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Sharing a room with you. I thought it'd be weird. But it's not." I swallowed, forcing a small smile. "Good to know I'm not unbearable company." The corner of his mouth lifted. "Far from it." Those words sat between us like a secret neither of us wanted to name. As the night dragged on, small things began to stand out. The way he brushed past me when reaching for his bag, his hand grazing my arm briefly. The way his laugh came out softer now, lower, as though it was meant just for me. The way he looked at me a fraction longer than necessary, as though trying to memorize something. Butterflies stirred in my stomach. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Exhaustion. Imagination. But when I caught his reflection in the mirror, his gaze fixed on me even when he thought I wasn't looking, I knew I wasn't imagining it. We climbed into bed eventually, staying as far apart as possible, the invisible line between us glowing like fire. I could feel the heat radiating from his side, hear the steady rhythm of his breathing, and though we didn't touch, every nerve in my body was aware of him. It wasn't physical contact that made it dangerous. It was the closeness, the possibility, the what if. And that night, I realized something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. We were no longer just colleagues caught in an awkward situation. We were two people teetering on the edge of something we couldn't take back. The next evening, the rain started just as we stepped out of the cab. Sheets of water poured down, soaking the pavement, and we dashed inside the hotel lobby, laughing and dripping wet. My hair clung to my skin, my dress sticking in places I didn't want to notice, and when I glanced at him, I caught that same flicker in his eyes again. That pause, that unspoken thought. Back in the room, we scrambled to dry off. He handed me one of the fluffy hotel towels, his fingers brushing mine just a little too long. I told myself not to overthink it, but my pulse betrayed me, racing faster than it should. "Here," he said, pulling the extra blanket from the closet. He tossed it onto the bed, then chuckled. "Guess the universe really likes to see us uncomfortable." I smiled, though my voice wavered. Or maybe it just knows something we don't. That silenced him. For a moment, the only sound was the steady hum of the air conditioning, the faint patter of rain against the window. His gaze lingered on me, searching, testing. We sat on opposite sides of the bed, neither of us willing to lie down yet, as though we both knew sleep wasn't coming anytime soon. Conversation trickled in fits and starts, work, travel, meaningless small talk. But beneath every word was tension, thick and undeniable. Finally, he shifted, leaning back on his hands. "Can I be honest with you?" he asked softly. I nodded, though my throat felt dry. Us sharing a room, being here like this, it's messing with me more than I thought it would. My breath caught. I tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. "You think you're the only one?" His eyes widened, then softened, as though my confession gave him permission he'd been waiting for. "So I'm not crazy." I shook my head, whispering, "No, you're not." The air between us shifted, warmer, heavier. He inched closer, just a fraction, but it was enough to set every nerve alight. "We probably shouldn't," he murmured, though his gaze dipped briefly to my lips. "Probably," I echoed, my voice trembling. But I didn't move away. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The world outside the window blurred into silence. The rain, the city noise, everything fading, until all I could hear was the pounding of my heart and the steady rhythm of his breathing. And then, finally, the line we'd been pretending not to see disappeared. His hand found mine, tentative at first, then certain. My breath hitched, my body leaning into him instinctively, like I'd been waiting for this without even realizing it. The moment our eyes locked, I knew there was no going back. The silence between us didn't feel empty anymore. It was charged, alive, pulsing with all the words neither of us dared to say. When his thumb brushed across my knuckles, I felt it all the way through me, as if the tiniest gesture had unlocked a dam I'd been holding shut for years. He leaned in first, slow, deliberate, giving me time to breathe, time to retreat if I wanted. But retreat was the last thing on my mind. When his lips finally touched mine, the world tipped sideways. It wasn't hurried or careless. It was deep, lingering, filled with the kind of hunger that comes from waiting too long. I melted into him, every ounce of resistance gone, my hands clutching the soft fabric of his shirt. His kiss grew more certain, his fingers tangling in my hair, tilting my face toward him as though he couldn't get enough. And truthfully, neither could I. The rain against the window drummed louder, echoing the rush of blood in my ears. The bed, still neatly made, became our anchor as we stumbled back toward it, unwilling to break apart. We collapsed onto the blanket, laughter spilling between us, the sound breathless and delirious, like two people caught doing something forbidden and wonderful all at once. He hovered over me, his gaze drinking me in. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, the words slipping out like a secret he hadn't meant to reveal. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I brushed my fingers across his jawline, memorizing the rough edges softened by the glow of the bedside lamp. "You have no idea how long I've wanted this," I admitted, the confession trembling on my lips. The room became its own universe, warm, golden, wrapped in the steady rhythm of our breathing and the storm outside. Every touch carried more weight than it should have, every kiss more desperate, more urgent. My heart raced as his hands explored the outline of me, not rushing, just tracing, savoring, like he wanted to learn me piece by piece. I closed my eyes, letting the feelings sink into me, imprinting every second. His whispers brushed against my ear, gentle assurances, soft laughter, fragments of my name tangled with words I'd never forget. The intimacy wasn't only in the closeness of our bodies, but in the way he looked at me, like he was memorizing me too. Time stretched, dissolved. I lost track of minutes, maybe hours, caught in the ebb and flow of something that felt bigger than either of us. There were pauses, moments where we pulled back just to look at each other, to breathe, to let the reality of what was happening sink in. His forehead rested against mine, and he smiled, eyes crinkling with a mix of awe and disbelief. "This doesn't feel real," he murmured, his voice low, husky. I brushed a kiss across his cheek and whispered, "It feels too real." That's the problem. And then we were lost again, the intensity building until nothing else mattered. The world outside could have ended and I wouldn't have noticed. All that existed was him, the way his heartbeat thundered against mine, the heat of his skin, the tenderness that underpinned every movement. At one point, I glanced toward the bedside table and saw the hotel key card, discarded and forgotten, lying there like proof of how ordinary the night had begun. But what was happening now was anything but ordinary. The storm outside eventually softened, the rain quieting to a whisper. Inside, the air grew heavy and still, our breaths filling the silence. When it was over, we lay tangled in the blankets, our bodies warm and our thoughts spinning. My head rested against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, grounding me in the reality of what had just unfolded. Neither of us spoke for a while. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, brimming with the weight of what we'd shared. My fingers traced idle circles on his arm, my mind struggling to process how something so natural, so inevitable, could feel so dangerously new. He finally broke the silence. "We just crossed a line, didn't we?" I tilted my head up to meet his gaze. His eyes weren't regretful, only searching, a mix of vulnerability and wonder. "Yes," I whispered. "But maybe it was a line we were always meant to cross." He kissed me again, softer this time, a promise tucked into the curve of his lips. And as I closed my eyes, drifting into the warmth of him, I knew this night would mark me forever. The morning light crept in through the thin hotel curtains, brushing everything in a soft, golden glow. I blinked awake slowly, my body heavy, my mind caught between dream and memory. But when I shifted and felt the warmth beside me, when I saw him still lying there with one arm lazily draped across me, reality settled in. I hadn't dreamed it. The night before was real. I lay still for a moment, listening to his even breaths, watching the rise and fall of his chest. He looked so peaceful, so different from the man I'd known in the daylight, the one who always carried himself with a mix of humor and confidence. Now he looked open, vulnerable, as though last night had peeled away layers I'd never seen before. A dozen questions swirled through my head. What would happen now? Was this just a single night carved out of time, or was it the start of something bigger, something I wasn't ready to name yet? I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He stirred lightly, his arm tightening around me, as if even in his sleep he didn't want to let me go. That small gesture sent a rush of warmth through me, melting the fear that had started to creep in. Eventually, he woke, his eyes fluttering open to find me watching him. For a second, he smiled, an easy, genuine smile that eased the knot in my chest. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough, still edged with sleep. "Morning," I whispered back, suddenly shy, like we hadn't just spent hours wrapped around each other. We lay there, talking in hushed tones, about nothing and everything. The storm had passed, leaving behind that fragile clarity that comes after chaos. I wanted to hold on to it, bottle it up, keep it safe. But a part of me knew that once we left this room, once we stepped back into the rhythm of our lives, things wouldn't feel this simple anymore. As we packed our things later, the air between us was quieter, but not in a bad way. It felt thoughtful, heavy with the unspoken truth that something had changed, forever. Walking out of the hotel lobby beside him, I caught his hand in mine. He looked down, squeezed gently, and though neither of us said the words, I felt them lingering in the silence. This wasn't a mistake. Even if the world never knew about that night, I would. And I knew I'd carry it with me, every look, every kiss, every whispered promise, for the rest of my life. Some moments live in you forever, the kind that blur the line between dream and reality, leaving you wondering if fate had always planned it that way. That night in the hotel room was one of those moments for me, a secret carved into time that I'll never forget. But now I want to hear from you. Have you ever shared a moment with someone that felt unexpected, unforgettable, maybe even a little forbidden? Tell me your story in the comments. I love reading your experiences. And if you enjoyed mine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay for the next confession.